Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Jay. Just here to do a short little video. Sad news to report on the death of Tito Jackson. Uh, well, 1/5 of the singing group, the Jackson Five, passing away at the age of 70 years old. Yeah, Tito Jackson, of course, born in Gary. Hey, Lisa, what's going on? Born in Gary, Indiana. He was the third child of Catherine and Joseph Jackson. Um, in 1953, of course, the ones that preceded him was his sister Rebe and his brother Jackie. For some reason, I thought Jermaine was older than him, but I guess not. But anyway, uh, he was born in 2300, raised in 2300 Jackson Street. Of course, like I said, Gary, Indiana, 1953. In 1968, he recorded his first song with his brothers um, called "I'm a Big Boy Now" for Steel Town Records. But prior to that, Tito Jackson was actually the founder of the Jackson Five, and I'll explain in a minute why. Tito was receiving, unbeknownst to his father, receiving lessons from his uncle Luther, because his father, Joseph Jackson, and his uncle Luther Jackson were in a blues band called the Falcons. So Tito was receiving lessons, guitar lessons, from his uncle, but he didn't want his dad to find out. So while his dad was at work, he practiced on his father's guitar. Now, the Jackson children were prohibited from touching their dad's instruments because that's how the dad earned side money. He worked in the steel mill because Gary at that time was a hub of steel production. That's why the record company that they recorded the song on was called Steel Town Records, because much like Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, it's Indiana, so it was a Rust Belt state. So the father worked in the steel mill, but on the side he did gigs, you know, music gigs. So that's how he earned his livelihood. So he didn't want his kids to touch those instruments. But Tito was practicing it, and one of the strings broke. And the mother found out initially, and she questioned Tito about it, and Tito lied about it. She tried to cover it up because she knew how strict of a disciplinarian Joseph was. When Joseph found out about it, Tito got his butt whipped, basically, by his dad. And but then he admitted, I touched it. Yeah, it was an accident. The guitar string broke, but I know how to play. I'm real good at it. And so he played it for his dad. And then that's when the dad figured out, what? He saw a gold mine in this. Because he's like, what? I don't got to be on the road with my brother doing these gigs. I could just use my kids because, they're 10 times better than me and my brother ever was. You know what I'm saying? Because Joe Jackson, when he moved with his father um, up from Arkansas to East Chicago, Indiana, he wanted to be a musician, but he couldn't because he got, Catherine pregnant at a young age. You know what I mean? So, and in 1950, they moved into 2300 Jackson Street. So, but anyway, he he said, we'll form a singing group. And initially they wanted to go with the Jackson Brothers and then the Jackson Four, because initially Michael Jackson, who was the youngest Jackson at that time, wasn't in the group. But so Tito was the founding member. So if it was for Tito breaking that string, they never would have been probably never would have been a Jackson Sing group, because Joseph would have never known that his sons had talent like that. So anyway, they record this record in 1968, Steeltown Records. I'm a big boy now. Michael Jackson, 10 years old during this time, and it's a really good record. A lot of people didn't know about it. That this was their first record before they got their deal on Motown. They got their deal in Motown in 1969. In late 1968, they went to perform at the Apollo. That's where they got the attention of this guy from the lead singer of the Vancouvers. And that lead singer told Berry Gordy about them. And then in 1969, they went down to meet with Berry Gordy and signed to Motown. And in 1969, on the Ed Sullivan Show, they were debuted to the world, as the Jackson 5, and that's when they recorded "I Want You Back," and shortly after that, ABC, and all the string of hits that the Jackson 5 was known for. Of course, in 1976, they left Motown Records to go to Epic Records, and that's when Randy joined the group, because Jermaine, of course, stayed behind in Motown because he was tied to Motown Records. And he didn't want to leave, so Jermaine went solo. But Tito went along with his brothers to Epic Records. They couldn't use the name, the Jackson 5, because even though they came on the label with that name, Berry Gordy owned the rights to it, so they just became the Jacksons. And of course, that's when they recorded "Keep on Dancing." But in the mid 1970s, Tito got married. Tito was the first of the boys to get married. Maureen, or Rebe, Maureen's her birth name. The first sister, the Jackson's first child, that's her birth name, Maureen, but they call her Rebe. She was the first of any of the Jacksons to get married, but Tito was the first boy. He married a woman her name was Dolores Didi Martez, and she was Hispanic, and they had 3 children together: TJ, Taj, TJ, and Terrell. As a matter of fact, I don't know if I mentioned this in the beginning of the video. Maybe I did. Tito's real name was not Tito. That was his nickname. His real name was Terriano Adele. Terriano Ardell. Like a really weird name. Like him and his brother Jackie had nicknames. Jackie wasn't Jackie either. Jackie was Sigmund. That was his birth name. But Tito's was Terriano Ardell. So his brother's name, his son's name was Terriel, and they formed a singing group, the 3 T's. And they released their first album in 1996, which they did a song with their Uncle Michael. And of course, the group stayed together into the early 80s. They went on the famous Victory Tour. The Victory Tour with Michael Jackson burned his hair. And then after that, after the group broke up and Michael basically went solo, Tito really didn't do much after that. He's until 2016. In 2016, he recorded his own album, his first solo album ever, Tito Time. And on the Tito Time, he has a song with Big Daddy Kane called I forget the name Hold on, let me look it up, guys. Forgot the name. Uh, Get It Baby. It's called Get It Baby, featuring Big Daddy Kane, the rapper. And he went on tour for that. But it took him mad long to come out with his own album. You know, he was a guitar player. He never really was a vocalist like that. The two vocalists of the group were Michael and Jermaine. So I guess, I don't know. He never really focused on that. Unfortunately, he divorced his wife in 1988. And she passed away not so long after that. Her body was found dead in the pool. And it was ruled an accident at first, but later on they discovered and they actually locked the guy up, the individual up that actually murdered her. And then that individual is still doing time as we speak. Yeah, his name was Don Bohanna. He was somebody that Dee Dee Jackson was dating after her and Tito got a divorce. So, and he killed her. He went to jail for it in 1998, and he's still serving time to this day. Um, in in the late 2000s, Tito was the executive producer behind the reality TV show Jackson's Family Dynasty, and his kids were behind that. The one that resembles him the most, I would say, is his son Taj, and people know Taj Jackson, because Taj became famous really well in the group Three T's and in the reality show, but really became he and his cousin Brandy, who is Jackie's daughter, uh, became real famous in 2019 around the circuit, defending their uncle Michael from these allegations. The Leaving Neverland, when the HBO released the Leaving Neverland documentary, Taj and his sister, I mean his cousin Brandy, were the two vociferous faces of Michael's defense. But all the family really defended Michael Jackson, from that. His sons, one of his sons actually dated the Kardashians, because remember, they grew up, in that area. The Havenhurst house is located in, I think it's either Calabasas or Santa Barbara, right? Some county in Southern California where a lot of rich people are. You know what I mean? So they grew up in there. So think about it. The Jacksons and the Kardashians could have been connected if his sons would have went out or continue going out with the Kardashians. But anyway, that's the life of Tito Jackson. A lot of ups and downs. He was known as Papa T. He was known as Tito, of course. He was known as Tito Time. He has an interview with Vlad from Vlad TV when he came out with his album Tito Time back in 2016. He went around promoting it, and Vlad, of course, hopped on, because at that time, Vlad was really the only urban podcast. There was no Club Shay Shay or anything of that nature. So Vlad got the interview with him, and Vlad is pretty much respectful, but there are certain times during the interview where Tito had to shut him down, because they always try to the two individuals from the Jackson family that people always try to defame are Michael Jackson because of the alleged allegations, and Joseph Jackson because of the abuse. And Tito defends them both. He even defends his pops because the way he sees it, the way they all see it, even Michael grew to see it this way when he grew up later and he became a father himself, was that Joseph was trying his best to keep them on the straight and narrow. Now, was Joseph Jackson um, exploitative? Did he exploit his children? Did he use them for his personal gain? Yeah, he did. You know what I mean? But if he wasn't pushing them, we would have never been exposed to their talents. You know what I mean? We would have never known that they had this talent. They Gary was a very dangerous place. Still is a very dangerous part of Indiana. You know what I'm saying? Filled with a lot of gangs, a lot of drugs, and a lot of other bad things that kids were getting into. So his father used music to keep them on the straight and narrow. You know what I mean? And he was strict with them. You know what I mean? But that's the way that parents were back then. You know what I mean? Rightly or wrongly. If it wasn't for him, they would have never became what they became. You know what I mean? They had talent, but they needed direction and they needed guidance. He was excessive at times, I'll admit. You know what I mean? He was excessive. You know what I mean? He was very excessive. But they wanted to sing, they wanted to perform. And he was trying to get them to do it the right way. And not only that, him being a guiding hand in their life prevented them from being involved in the music business and getting taken advantage of in the music business, like so many young acts do. Lisa could attest to this. Lisa's a fan of TLC, and TLC is a perfect example of that. Here's you got three young girls. They're really talented. They don't know anything except music. They don't know the business like that. They don't have a guiding hand like a Joseph Jackson in their life to tell them about the music business, somebody that knows about it. So they got taken advantage of. They got into a bad deal with somebody that didn't have their best interests at heart. And they got taken advantage of. That didn't happen with the Jackson because Joseph was there. Not only was he there doing it for them, he was educating them on how to be successful within the business of the music business. Because you could have the talent all you want, but if you don't have the business acumen, and this is what made Michael Jackson so dangerous, because he picked up these cues from his dad and he took it even further and he became uh, the business, you know, the good businessman that he later became. Read that book, Michael Jackson Inc., and it'll tell you of how he was a great businessman. Now, where he was lacking, and was the interpersonal relationships. He didn't know about friendships. He knew that friends could take advantage of you, or people that you're close with can take advantage of you, and that's where he got taken advantage of. But as far as the business side of it, he never got taken advantage of. He was never part of anything like that. Lisa says, "Does Tito have a book?" I'm not sure, Lisa. Let me look it up. Uh, he doesn't have a book himself, but he has uh, uh, a book called "The Jacksons: A Legacy." A legacy, basically about them all, but not his own stuff. No, he was really quiet. He kept a low profile compared to some of his other siblings. And I feel like he looked the most like his mom out of all of them. You know what I mean? He looked like the mom. Uh, really, you know, Jermaine looks a lot like Joe, and but Tito looked a lot like the mom. Of course, Eddie Murphy has the first thing I thought of when they mentioned that Tito passed away, besides the Jackson Five, was that the Eddie Murphy skit. There's an Eddie Murphy skit from the movie from the Eddie Murphy stand-up movie Delirious. He's talking about how certain men will use their voices to attract women. They'll sing voices, and he says, "Well, Michael Jackson, he's a great singer," and he goes on to sing uh, a part of "She's Out of My Life," and he's like, he's doing Michael's voice, and he's imitating Michael saying, "Tito, give me a tissue," and he's pretending to be Michael Jackson crying. That's the first thing I thought of. But anyway, yeah. Unfortunately, another Jackson family, and I have two kids in my class that I go where I attend school now that are from Indiana. They're originally from Indiana, and they're now here in New York going to school. And they said that they visited uh, the where the Jacksons, the little house where the Jacksons all grew up at. You know, so yes, Lisa's right. They say he had a heart attack. He was in New Mexico. He was driving from New Mexico to Oklahoma to do a tour. Still touring after all this time, and he suffered a heart attack. So rest in peace to Tito Jackson, and condolences to his family. I don't know. Tito was a cool nickname, but Terriano Adero is a cooler name. Like that was a really cool name. Like, he should have kept that. Terriano Adero Jackson. And I remember when he did the interview with Carol Burnett, he was the swinginest Jackson. He was the quiet Jackson. I mean, he never really said much, but none of them ever really. It's funny because, like, when he was younger and I knew his name was Tito, I'm like, why would they name their kid Tito? He's not Hispanic. You know what I mean? Because Tito, traditionally, Tito, the actual name Tito, is a Spanish name. It's like Chico DeBarge. Like, when I was younger too, I'm like, why is his name Chico? Like, is he Puerto Rican or something? You know what I mean? Like, I didn't know any better. I was a kid. Yeah, the first three had nicknames. I guess they were ashamed of their names, Sigmund, Maureen, and Terriano Adero. So they called themselves Rebeat Jackson and Rebeat Jackie and Tito. I guess by the time they got to Jermaine, they're like, you know what? We'll just give him a cool first name, real name. you know, but they all have middle names. They all have middle names. Yes, Lisa's correct. His B day is October 15th, and he died on the 15th of September. Look at that. He would have been 71, just shy of his 71st birthday. Take care of your health, guys. Because heart attacks are a silent killer. You never know, especially driving. Driving is a really stressful activity. I remember Macho Man Randy Savage, the wrestler, he also suffered a heart attack behind the wheel. Driving is a really stressful activity. A lot of times when people are driving, especially like Tito was from one state to another, it can put a lot of stress on a person's heart. And because driving gets you upset. People on the road are assholes. Right? You're constantly yelling at people on the road and shit. You know. But anyway, rest in peace to Tito Jackson. Now there's only three left. You know, well, four because Randy was later inserted into the group. So there is Jackie, Jermaine, Marlon, and and Randy. Of the brothers. 10 children altogether. Um, the brother Brandon, who was the twin of Marlon, died as a baby. Michael, of course, passing away in 2009. And all the girls are still with us. You know, Janet, she's the baby. She's the baby. Like she's the last child. Randy is the baby of the boys. Even though the media always wanted us to think Michael was the baby of the boys. Notice that, at least, that the media always presented it like Michael was the youngest boy when he really wasn't. Randy's after him. But even when Randy joined the group later, they still presented it like Michael was the younger one, even though Randy was younger than Michael. Yeah. Well, if Latoya had talent, I wonder this. I know when they did their Vegas residency in the '70s, they did have the girls as a singing group. But if Latoya had actual talent and could actually be a successful singer, they probably would have did the girls in a singing trio like they did the boys out on the road. You know what I mean? But since Latoya couldn't really sing like that, they couldn't do it like that. Even though Latoya did sing a little bit, uh, it's funny. She has a song called "My Baby Sister," and in the song she says, uh, "They used to love me till they met my baby sister," and that's kind of like how it really was. Like she was like the girl that everybody looked up to, whatever. And then Janet came along, and Janet, of course, real super talented, and nobody cared about Latoya no more. Yeah. Tito had, yeah. Let me see how many. Children. He has 5 children, and and several grandchildren. I'm not sure, it doesn't say here. But he had a few grandchildren and 5 kids himself. So, and it's sad because he never got to see the biopic of his brother Michael that's coming out next year. That his nephew, Jafar, uh, Jermaine's son, will be portraying his brother. You know, I think they got along well. He and Michael and Tito. You know what I mean? It was Jermaine that Michael had the rivalry with. You know, Jermaine and Michael was at each other's throats because, again, Michael took Jermaine's place as the lead singer of the group. If Michael never had that talent show, maybe Jermaine would have been the one that was the biggest selling artist in the history of music. You know, who knows? Anyway, rest in peace to Tito Jackson. Peace, love you guys. Thank you, Lisa, for contributing. Have a lovely night.